Okay, take it away.
All right, well, I'm happy to be here. As mentioned, my name is Gallardy, and I'm
Okay, so let's.
see if they can hear me, because the problem's going to be with the audio when I put videos. There's going to be an echo.
Yeah, because we've had echoes a lot. Okay, folks,
Are you able to hear me?
can you hear? So just write on the chat if
Yeah, it looks like
you can
we're
hear.
getting some thumbs up, so they should be. I'll just
All
make
right.
sure I'm talking about. Sorry about that. I've been talking to the room and not to anyone else apparently. So I'll just go over this again real quick, but we essentially did a 9-month trip around Africa. The first 3 months were at the beginning of 2020, but of course we had to come to a tactical pause in March of 2020 as the world was shutting down, leaving our vehicle in Africa. And then luckily we were able to go back in March, April of 2021, finish out another 6 months for a total of 9 months. During that time, we visited a total of 13 countries, most of which we wanted to do, but unfortunately we never did make it to Ethiopia or Angola due to some COVID policies and them not opening up their land borders for us to get our vehicle. But in total, it was a great success. We saw a little over 1,500 species of birds in Africa. Quite a large number. There's only a little over 2,000 recorded in Africa, so over 3/4 of the species. And in total, we drove a lot, 65,000 kilometers or 40,000 miles. So if you put that into perspective, driving to California and back is about 5,000 miles, so doing that about 8 times. And total cost was right around $36,000, which you might think, okay, wait, budget trip, that's not much of a budget. But when you think about it over 9 months, coming out to only about $4,000 a month. Living in Westchester, so worked out in the end. But this was our general trip. We bought and sold the vehicle in South Africa. Due to regulations, you can't really buy in one country and sell in another. So we had to do a return trip. But we started in South Africa, heading up essentially the eastern side of Africa, up into Kenya, and then coming back down to Uganda, back into Tanzania, then Zambia, dropping down into Namibia, and back to South Africa. So we're gonna go through and kind of talk about a couple of our highlights of the trip.
Just to point out, you see those little yellow dots. We did visit Ghana, Gabon, and then Sao Tome and Principe is the island off the coast there. We did not drive there. We flew there, but that was part of the trip since we were already there and we wanted to add a little bit in. So.
All right, so first I want to introduce you to our truck, Felix. So we bought Felix in South Africa, outside of Johannesburg, for a price of $26,000. At purchase, it had a little under 200,000 kilometers, or about 110,000 miles. It was diesel, had a long-range fuel tank, which is very helpful when you're in remote areas. It also had a water tank to it, which we could fill up with fresh water, which was nice. Fridge, freezer, rooftop tent. And at the end of our trip, we were able to sell for about So typically, if you went to Africa and tried to rent a vehicle like this, it would be, you know, almost $150 a day. So when you think about it at that price, it's a much better option to buy and sell on the back end. Which I mentioned to the group in the room earlier, we're going to be switching between back and forth between a few videos. You should be able to hear it, but if not, just let me know.
Okay, so everyone's been asking to see our truck, so I'm gonna give you a little tour. All right, ready? Okay, so a while ago I said I was gonna give you a tour of this truck and never got around to it, but going to do that right now. Meet Felix.
So as I mentioned, here are some of the capabilities of the truck, pretty much over the house fund goes.
This is all of our kitchen stuff for cooking. Right here is a fridge freezer going around the back. Plenty of room for storage. We keep all of our clothes in these bins. Here is what I would consider our pantry. I don't know, just various things for cooking, for food. Everything fits in super nicely in this little spot for storage of all of our kitchen gear. All right, super easy to set up as well. We have a collapsible ladder, and all you have to do is really just push on the bottom, and it pretty much just sets itself up, just like that. Easy. Huh, Ross, is it easy?
Easy peasy.
Super easy.
That's good.
And there you go. That's it. As I mentioned, we store our clothing in these little plastic totes. There's probably 100 ways to do this, probably better ways than this, but hey, this is what works for us and keeps our clothes clean and organized. This is the inside of our tent. Super comfortable. Actually, we have our own pillows, sleeping bags, and then a 2-inch foam mattress underneath. So one of the most comfortable beds I've ever slept on. Certainly something nice about having your own bed when traveling. So one thing that's been super great to have are these fans. They, on a hot night, I'm telling you, this is so needed. Plus it works as a light as well. Okay, so one of the greatest things about this tent is how quickly it is to take down. I mean, I don't know, what, 10 seconds?
So this is our original setup.
Yeah, it was a fold over tent. It was a lot harder to set up, take down.
Up here, and we are currently sleeping inside of a wildlife reserve. So there's elephants all around me somewhere. But the theory behind a rooftop tent is you're up high, so it's safer.
For fried rice.
We actually do have lights that come on to our truck on either side. Here, Ross will show you. See, so technically it is super easy to cook underneath it. We just didn't want all the insects. They're not invited.
This is us setting up the old tent, and you can see it's a little more involved. So this is one of the things we learned.
Yeah, and so this is what happened. Like, so in between COVID, right, when we had to even come home, we had to eventually get our truck back to South Africa and start the trip over again. And during that time, we sold the old tent. We got a new tent, which was a very good decision.
But because it folded over, we liked having that. So we decided to attach an awning instead. So we were able to have, you know, a tent that pops up and an awning if we wanted it.
So inside we also keep 2 gas canisters for cooking. This is kind of a side view, and really great is having this light when you're cooking at night. You can just set it up. Right here is where our table is kept. On top we have some jerry cans for either diesel or water. And speaking of water, this is probably my #1 most favorite thing about this truck. This faucet. Super nice.
yeah, we were in Africa for 10 months. I didn't buy a single bottle of water. And we, no, they like it too.
Yeah, you know, we were in like,
This was in Namibia.
yeah, dry areas, you just turn on the tap. One time.
Watch this in slow motion. This is a gray-headed sparrow, but they know where the water was coming from. They like knew it was there, so they would come up to it, and we took this slow-mo video of these birds just like going underneath the faucet like that to pull out the water. So we would turn it on for them too. We didn't. Like, but there
Oh,
they
yeah,
are.
like a party with-
Yeah. I think this is in Etosha that we took this, and Etosha is like a beautiful place, and I think we had so much fun just in the little parking lot with the birds, not necessarily at the watering holes. But
All right, so that was an overview of our truck. Pretty much our home for 9 months. We enjoyed it. Great way to travel around. Always never had to worry about a place where you were going to sleep. Always had food. You know, we'd eat local food at times, but it was always nice to just have your stuff. You could set up anywhere out in the bush. Make sure you had food. Make sure you had
so
water.
we could ask anyone. We camped everywhere and anywhere.
But there's also issues about driving yourself around, and that was the roads. So especially the first part of the trip when we were there from January to March, the first time around, we were in Tanzania during the wet season, which was quite the adventure. Like that first photo on the left, my wheel was about
Yeah, you can't see it.
2 inches from going off.
But
the
right
side.
where that greenery is, there's a cliff.
Yeah,
And
so that
2
was-
inches. I mean, the wheel, I don't even, yeah, do we have the video?
So the good thing is about in Africa is there's always a recovery crew right around.
They see you stuck, they'll help you. They'll
It's a
help you.
very populated continent for the most part. There's always some villagers around, so anytime you get stopped, people are extremely friendly, always willing to help. One time we were actually, the road was so slick, we were just slowly drifting to the side, and there was about a 20-foot cliff. And even though the road was almost flat, it was just so slippery. And eventually, I had to get about 15 villagers on one side of the truck would just be pushing the truck as high, like from the side, so it wouldn't slip over the cliff as I just inched.
And I was
forward.
like, I can't get into that.
After
I mean,
after we had chipped off all the slippery mud, to get a little bit more traction, but it's always a fun time. And of course, also with the bad roads comes repairs. We were always having issues, and just like recovery crews, there was always a bush mechanic around. Some with better ideas than others on how to fix the vehicles. But it was definitely an adventure, especially the one in the middle here. So as you can see, my tire literally caved in completely.
yeah, I don't know if you could see it sideways, like kind of.
This was in the middle of Serengeti. So one of the benefits of traveling during COVID was no people. Typically, if you drive around Serengeti National Park, it's you and 50 of your closest safari vehicle friends. We spent the entire day driving around Serengeti and not seeing a single other vehicle. On this particular day, we had driven all around, not seeing a single
Didn't see
vehicle.
anyone.
And we're coming into our campsite, in one of the main areas, actually the main area of the Serengeti. And we were only about 200-300 meters from the campsite, and I backed up and heard a noise and got out of the car, and the tire was completely caved in. Luckily, since it was the main area, there was actually there was a mechanic available.
Just dumb luck where we broke down.
So I walked a little bit, flagged the guy, and was able to bring them out. And that night we were able to get it fixed. And even as we were getting it fixed, I was like watching with the thermal, and there's like a hyena sitting there, like watching us. And how they fixed it is they just welded the ball bearing together, which is like not typically something you want to do. But the guy said it would work forever. Serengeti is a very expensive place, so we didn't want to leave. So we're like, let's get our 4 days in here, and then we'll get it fixed once we get back to the main city of Arusha, which we did. But when we got back to Arusha and took it to a reputable mechanic and pulled it off, he's like, yeah, this thing's gonna break it. So we made it through, luckily, in Serengeti to get it fixed again. But it's kind of always an all-encompassing issue. As you can see here, our back axle broke. Our tire is almost touching a mud flat. Upper left-hand corner, I almost rolled the vehicle.
Really almost flipped it.
We were getting out of a very tough area, and I'll just show you another quick video of how fun navigating the roads can be. It's essentially just skating down. I mean, especially with a vehicle like this, it's very top heavy. You have, a tent on top, you have a lot of gear in the back, and there's just not much you could do.
The road is so slick.
We had gone up this road to look for a number of endemic species and actually couldn't make it the whole way up. We had to just leave our truck and hike up a couple extra kilometers to get up to where we needed to be. And then getting back was a different slide.
I don't even know if we have the best video of the one
Oh my
where
God,
you're
I'm
up.
so
Yeah.
bad at this.
But yeah, just slow and sure and
I don't know how. Oh my
It
God.
goes down sideways and.
the vehicle pretty much just has a mind of its own in this situation.
The road, there's no control. I mean, the mud just so.
And as
slippery.
she got nervous, she would get out a lot of
I
times.
couldn't ride in that.
Well, thank goodness, so you could video.
Yeah, somebody did.
And that's, I mean, this happened a number of times. That's just one example. I think we have another video somewhere in the vault somewhere, but it's literally that cliff that we mentioned, just like slow, you're trying to go straight, but because there's a slight gradient on the road is just mud taking you sideways to a cliff essentially.
But of course, taking these roads gets you to some beautiful places, right? A wide variety of habitats in Africa, everything from, montane deciduous forests in Tanzania on the left there to the red sand dunes in Namibia, out in the middle of the Serengeti, no one in sight. Some of the rocky areas in very harsh sandy deserts in Namibia as well. This is the highlands of Malawi on right here. And then of course, beautiful waterfalls, right? So we have Victoria Falls in the upper left-hand corner. These other ones are just some other falls that were encountered in Zambia. Absolutely.
Side note about this falls on the right here. We actually camped. I mean, you can't really see it in the photo, but if you just imagine like just coming forward a little bit, and that's where our truck is parked. We're the only ones there. We just slept right there next to the waterfall, nobody else around, and that was our view out the window of our truck.
So when we put this presentation together, we were like, what do we talk about?
We can talk about anything.
There's a lot of different there's a lot of different subjects we could have went with, right? So living out of our truck, the roads, which we talked about a little bit, visiting the Queen and Mount Namudi. What happens when you end up in Africa in the middle of a global pandemic? We thought about the last flight out of Ethiopia to get home and literally left or out of Tanzania and left our vehicle at a German expats place that we had met 3 days earlier. Our wild dog experience where we got some wild dogs chased down a bushbuck successfully. Looking for kicking gear seed eater, which was one of the only birds we dipped there, spending an entire week looking for a little brown bird and seeing it. Extremely hard hikes in Tanzania and just Tanzania in general, which we have a very lovely relationship with.
I still think I should do a presentation on that hike in Tanzania. So maybe I'll put it together because that one deserves one.
Of course, discovering new species, gorillas, night birding with thermal, deforestation, and how that affects, populations in Africa. Gabon, which we don't really touch on here, but how fantastic it is. Traveling during COVID, which I mentioned, right? It was a once in a lifetime experience. It's finding the silver lining in the pandemic, but visiting these places without really a soul in sight. That typically, even when we went to Victoria Falls, which is a massive, tourist site, I think we saw like 5 or 10 people.
So we had Victoria Falls to ourselves. That never happened. So.
And then of course, border crossings, which are just as chaotic as they can be, as you can imagine, getting across the border and a bunch of officials from this country and officials from that country. And, most of these countries have a number of corrupt officials and everything. So navigating, getting your vehicle across the border, border crossings usually took anywhere from 2 hours to like 8 hours. So usually that was like our goal just for that day. It's like, okay, we're gonna get from Zambia into Tanzania. Hopefully we can make it through. And then of course all the places we slept.
So yeah, any of this could be a whole presentation.
But we only can pick a few, so we're gonna go through a few. Hopefully some of the better highlights and show a few videos that let's put together that explains them. And feel free to ask questions whenever. Not during the videos, but before or after. Happy to take any. But so we're gonna start with the trek up Mount Namuli in Mozambique, or Namuli-Apolis. This is a species of bird that there have been some expeditions, I think, I forget when the last one was, but it hadn't been seen in like 20 years or so that it visited this area to document the species. Like that was the first picture of it on eBird. But it was a very cool experience, and Melissa tells it better in videos.
Mount Namuli is located in central Mozambique. It's Mozambique's second highest point, and to get there, you start in this little town here of Garue. Even though we didn't have anything as far as exact logistics on how to get to Mount Namuli, we knew that we had to go to the Ukulini Forest thanks to two reports, this one from 1999 that talks about the birds that they found when they were there. The most recent of which was from February of 2009. But the study actually took place in 2007. This talks about all of the different flora and fauna that they found on this very unique mountain. We had 4 main targets when we went to go visit Namuli, the most important of which is this, the Namuli-Apolis, currently Namuli's only endemic bird. We were also targeting certain subspecies, like the nominate race of dapplethroat, Thoyolo aletha, which is part of white-chested aletha, as well as Bella Cherry's green barbet, all 3 of which are endemic only to Mount Namuli. Interestingly, the very first expedition to Mount Namuli was in 1932 by Colonel Jack Vincent, where he discovered the Namuli-Apolis and the dapplethroat. Warning, do not go on a reconnaissance mission with Ross Gallardy.
Yeah.
So we had some information on this, but
So we just arrived in Garui, and the first step is to walk around and buy everything that we need to buy to give to the queen.
The village to pick up things like dried fish. I think we brought her like clothing, sugar, flour, just as a goodwill gesture.
All right, it's the next morning. It's time to take the motorbikes 1.5 hours up to the village to see the queen so we can start hiking in for the birds.
Road was too bad, we couldn't take our truck, we had to take the motorbike instead. Left the truck down the Garue, and then the road like this on a motorbike.
Well, I'm currently walking up one of the steep sections because the motorbike can't make it up with me on. They said we couldn't bring my Hilux, but so far it definitely could have tackled this road.
I
so
disagree with that
we'll see if
statement.
it's worthwhile bringing these motorbikes.
I think we could make it up.
I don't, not,
Pushing the motorbike is a strategy
Yeah.
one typically doesn't want to use.
this is us pushing the motorbike up the hill, because even the motorbike is struggling, but so then, if you've never ridden on the back of a motorbike, bounce, 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 holding on to some random guy, hoping you don't fall off.
So apparently this is the most complicated part of the road. The Hilux definitely could have made this. Should have taken the truck.
But no, I disagree. But yeah, like my bike at one point slipped.
How you doing, Melissa?
So it fell off at one point. This maybe the top, the small village at the top of the mountain. Then, so then we attend the ceremony with the queen. Like I said, to get permission to visit.
This is her doing the ceremony for the ancestors.
Money,
And
of
some
course.
money, of course. Most important part.
We finished up with the ceremony and we're heading back out to go climb the mountain.
That is the queen right there.
So we just finished up with the ceremony.
We have a website, by the way, if you're on the
Dr. B.
budgetburgers.com. We have stickers,
Gave her
and
sticker.
we gave her a sticker, and she put it on her front door. You guys have to find yourself out. If we get back on the motorbike, because where we were entering the forest was a different spot than where we had seen.
We did it wanted to get to. We took a local who said he knew where to go, but he didn't.
Like we showed those reports from way back when, 10 years ago.
Really shouldn't have to go that far. We're probably gonna be about a 45-minute hike, hopefully.
Those reports kind of mentioned it, but it's like guesswork. We're like trying to figure out, okay, how do we do this? We didn't have exact logistics. It was kind of like,
Picking up his
let's
cheek.
figure this out. The last people to visit here were, you know, over a decade apart,
About being easy
so it was
hike.
just us.
Started down in that valley.
So then we
Hiked way up,
up.
but not to the right spot.
So we ended up here. Koshane, which is that man right there with the hat, he was the one we had hired and thought that was the forest we wanted to go to, but then when we got there, we're
Well,
like,
we climbed up here, but we can't really find a place to camp.
so we're on a slope, so we're looking for somewhere
Decided.
flat, like where.
We go down here and camp.
So then we're gonna walk back
Well,
down,
we made it to the campsite about,
where we
well,
decided.
it started raining about 10 minutes before we got to the campsite. So we got to do everything in the rain
We're
and
upstairs in the
everything.
rainy
So
season.
got a flat area,
Here,
got a tarp up.
this one you can put on.
Not really the forest we want to be in, but we're gonna bird here for the time being.
We did, there was a small forest, we decided, let's get out, see what we can find. We didn't really see, you know, any of our targets, so. They're on the slope there, just by putting cameras in it. And then the tarp,
The break.
the shelter shrubbles. So we had to get out in the middle of the night to fix it. So then the next day we take down camp, decide, all right, we're gonna walk to the next forest. This is now finally the Ukulele forest where we wanted to be. It's the only patch of forest left on the mountain, really.
It's the steepest. Everywhere else.
Yeah, everything else has been farmed at this point. So it's the
So
literally.
we finally made it to the right forest. And in
rainy
the morning
season.
we wake up hoping to find everything. It's pouring down rain.
Raining.
So we're currently trying for dapple throat.
I'm whispering, you can't hear me.
Over looking for a bird, but we got the Apollos and the Leffe easy, and that's good.
There's the Apollos.
Because there's different types of birds, right? There's some where they're tricky just because it's tricky to get to the spot, right? Versus some that are trickier, with like a yellow rail around here, right? It's tricky. This is one that was quite easy once you get to the spot. It's figuring out the spot.
Like I said, we could probably do a whole presentation on birds roosting because we went out so much at night. But those were just two photos of the birds roosting because we could look for them at night with his thermal imaging. So a lot of times you just be out,
but it is pretty.
yeah, it's steep but pretty.
But
Even
of course, even there, you know, you saw signs of deforestation.
big trees being cut. This is, you know,
Corn
this whole
being
patch
planted
being
and
burned
stuff.
down. This is corn here now being planted on the mountain. It's literally just a small bit that's left on the top.
So we're just bottling our water straight from the source.
Well,
Of
I
us.
never took a picture of the campsite when it was up, but here's us tearing it down. We decided to leave with the barbet as a herd only.
So we ended up walking way further than we anticipated. We still consider this a success, right?
Partial success.
We got all of our target birds.
We only heard the barbet.
But what can you say for figuring it out yourself? At least anyone who comes after us will have all of the right gen to get there easily, and we have a guide who knows exactly where to go.
Yeah, we wrote a report.
Yes, we got.
Away back, yeah?
Yes.
Thank you.
Kind of just caught him as well.
Really in the rainy season.
There you go.
Right there.
You're gonna get wet.
Okay, ready?
It's not always graceful, but it gets done. So, was it worth it?
I guess so.
That's why we
Got
got
the bird. Almost back, right? No, not even close. We haven't even gotten on our motorbikes yet, and we have to ride out this.
That's trying.
Made it back down the mountain, got our little hotel room here.
Luxury hotel room after nights of Hard camping, yeah.
Trying to draw everything out.
No. Look at that horse on an air
We put down an
mattress.
air mattress.
This bed is so bad. Seriously, I don't know if you can see this in the video or not. There's full-on divots.
The whole bed was like that. I mean, these would kind of
This is
like
not
normal if you were getting a hotel kind of
They
guy.
are.
But it's nice to have your own truck and your own bed.
Yeah.
Makes life easy.
And then again, 2 white eyes cuddling at night. So this is one of the motorbike guys putting the sticker on the Queen's door. So those stickers seem to hold up pretty okay. So I think it.
Well, I did it. All right, so
It'll be
that's
okay.
the
So
Any questions on that?
Having heard from anybody following your,
Yes.
Uh,
One who went up there.
no. A couple people were planning on it, but then with COVID and everything, a couple of the people I know haven't made it up. So I don't know if anyone else.
Someone
Is,
messaged you, right, about the sticker still being, who was that?
no, it's gone up.
Maybe not.
Yeah, people were going to, but they didn't because of well, one is it's not good to go in the rainy season, which is when we went. We got pretty lucky that we still even managed to get up the road. But I know there are people interested in going.
And then, yeah,
I've heard one comment first. I've heard that birding is better in the rainy season. And the other question is, where did you do laundry?
You want to
You-
take laundry
I'll
break?
do laundry real quick. So I bought this little bag thing called I forget the name of it, but essentially it's like a dry bag that had some ridges on the inside. And I could just like kind of push on it a lot, step on, I'd fill it with water and soap, and it was kind of like hands, and it was like a little dry bag, so I could pull it up really condensed.
Yeah.
And then if we ever got a hotel, it was not even like I got to enjoy the hotel, because I was using their sink or the bathtub and doing all the laundry I could do. Because it's Africa, I mean, there's not a laundromat, there's nowhere I could take to do the laundry, I'm doing it, so it's all done by hand, I had a little bit of soap, I would just hand wash, I mean, also, I mean, standards were also not like they would necessarily be here. I didn't care, you know, I wasn't trying to get it perfect. I was trying to just get it cleaner.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And then
And then with rainy season, I mean, it depends. It depends on the species you're looking for typically. And it can be quite good because a lot of birds are breeding during the rainy season. But one of the issues is, well, these places, it's accessibility, right? Like that video I showed you where we were sliding down the mountain with the truck, right? We weren't even able to get the whole way up. We had to walk the last little bit. And then there was other places we were going to go that we knew we couldn't even just get up there because the infrastructure, right? Roads were just too bad. So that's something that needs to, it's all about balance of logistics and prime time for the birds. But you are correct that sometimes rainy season. Any questions? Great. So moving on to the next one we're going to talk about is in Tanzania. So we spent a lot of time in Tanzania.
more than anywhere else we were in Africa.
And we were there. That's where we were when COVID hit, and we had to go home. And then, of course, that
Probably do a
started back
presentation
up.
on how to store a truck during a pandemic.
Yeah, just to, I guess we'll do a story real quick because it would take a long time, but I'll just do it quick because it is entertaining. So COVID was hitting, we weren't sure what to do. We were like, all right, we better go home. We had met this German mechanic in one of the larger cities in Tanzania a couple days before. It was just like, hey, can you leave our truck with you? So we left them with him and flew home. So there was only 2 countries in the world that didn't recognize COVID. Tanzania, and I think it was Tajikistan. So Tanzania has very strict rules about vehicles being imported into their country. You only can keep it for a few months. And because they didn't recognize COVID, actually, they didn't recognize COVID, their president eventually died.
Ironic, yeah.
But they didn't care that my vehicle was going to be overdue and go through. And I tried to do the necessary, the right way of doing it. The government in Tanzania is very corrupt, one of the more corrupt countries in Africa. And long story short, it didn't work out very well. They were going to impound my vehicle, charge me an exuberant amount per day to keep it. And plus, like if it would have went there, it would just be pillaged for parts.
Stripped of all the
Wouldn't
like
be.
Toyota parts, so.
So the German guy hired a Tanzanian to drive it the whole way across Tanzania to the border.
Of Malawi.
Which during that process, we totally lost contact with the guy who was driving it for 2 days. We thought our
He went
vehicle was stolen.
silent.
silence. Couldn't get a hold of him. His son couldn't get a hold of him.
We're
had
like,
to
did he
wreck the
die?
car,
We don't
someone-
know where
No
our
clue.
$20,000 truck is, like, oh no.
Eventually, luckily, he made contact with us, and that German made contact with another German expat in Malawi. So we got the vehicle down. We couldn't actually get our vehicle out of the country legally, so they had to smuggle it across.
We tried to do things the right way, okay, it
But
just
at
didn't
that
work
point,
out.
we couldn't. It stayed at that German expat's house in Malawi, and my buddy from South Africa flew up to Malawi, picked up the vehicle, and drove it back to his house in South Africa, which is probably about 20 hours.
Just said, he's a nice guy.
And then-
I'll just do that. for
And
you.
then when we went to fly back, I flew out 4 days early and drove from South Africa back up to Tanzania in 4 days, which is like 50 some hours of driving. And then she flew into,
Yeah, I was
Tanzania,
doing all the
we-
last minute stuff here, getting our
and met me in
stuff.
Tanzania to restart our trip to
And-
Tanzania.
Yeah,
So
it
that
was-
was a big to do.
It was funny because we left in March of 2020 in Tanzania and we got back in March of 2021.
Yeah.
Originally, I don't know if we mentioned it in this presentation or not, but we had a goal. Our initial goal was we were trying, did we mention this goal?
No, we were gonna break essentially the Africa big gear record, just because
Yeah.
we were gonna be birding it so much.
We were gonna be hardcore birding and we thought, okay, we're gonna go for this Africa big year record, the whole continent, and we were well on our way when COVID hit. I think we had only been there 3 months and we'd already seen 1,000 species, and I think the record was
Around 15.
1,500, and we did 1,000 in 3 months. So we were going to break that record, but because we were like, okay, so we left, we got back in March, and it's kind of, but I don't think it counts, so we just scrapped that idea.
But yeah, so lots of times in Tanzania, and the cool thing about Tanzania is there's
Do
a
you have a
lot.
question real quick
sorry.
too?
Did either of you come down with COVID during any of this?
Not that we know of,
No.
neither of us have actually ever.
And
had
so I'm
COVID.
actually a nurse. I worked at Chester County Hospital all during COVID. I had actually quit my job to go on this trip. And then essentially when we came back, I kind of just called up and they're like, yeah, we'll take you right back. It was like that. I mean, I didn't have to do anything. I just got my job back and then I worked COVID for the entire time until we left again.
But I think part of it is when we're traveling around, we're pretty self-sustainable, right? Like, I mean, of course, we do some shopping and stuff, but we weren't around people walking, we were outside. in open areas.
But even during the time of being home, I mean, I don't know.
But yeah, so in Tanzania, spent a lot of time there. There's a lot of unexplored remote areas in Tanzania. One of these places is the Rodeo Mountains, which is a mountain range kind of in the middle of the country. And in particular, this range had only been visited by ornithologists, I think, 2 times before we had gotten there.
Ever.
First time they went up, they found this bird, which is a Rodeo forest partridge, which was a new species. It's found in a nearby mountain range. The Zungas as well, but it's been genetics have shown that they could be split. And then there was another group up there for a while studying this particular bird. Of course, we went up there and you see.
To look for this bird.
Looking for this bird and a couple others. And the entire time before we were going up, Melissa kept saying, you need to find a new species, you need to find a new species. I'm like, we're not gonna find a new species. That's ridiculous. Like, people don't find new species.
2021,
Like, we
people
have,
don't
like,
find new species.
We have very important targets to look for. We're gonna focus on our targets. That's why we're going there. And once again, we didn't have a ton of information because no one really goes up there.
And if they do, they're researchers. They're not writing a trip report for somebody independent to just come up and do it. They're doing it, you know, to write about the.
So the researcher did share some information, some contacts, and this is our next adventure up into the Rodeo.
What are we doing, Lots? Trying to figure out how we're supposed to get to this village.
So just scouring satellite imagery.
Kongwa, Connect, Dichui.
That's what we're trying to figure out.
Trying to figure out the best route to get up.
Don't know how to get there. You just have to-
Here is our lovely accommodation for the night. Tonight we are parked at a gas station parking lot.
Not always a nice place to sleep.
That's part of me in the truck. So, we're going to see this Rodeo forest partridge, how we're gonna do it. Required driving, again, we scoured satellite imagery to find out what's the best way. I mean,
To be honest, all these bird chases are insane. There's some coordination, there's some hiking, there's some back roads, there's some looking, there's some finding. That sums it up.
they're all the same but different. I guess we got so used to it while we're there, but you kind of just forget that everywhere we're driving. Someone on the sidewalk.
We are on our way to the town of Mupwapwa, where we need to meet with the forestry department to coordinate permission to go into the forest. So first you have to get permission, then you can find people who want to join. To town, just kind of looking for where the forestry office is. So far have asked 4 different people.
Driving in circles.
Just driving in circles, basically. So we found an escort. This guy right here, we asked him and he's like, going there, so we'll follow.
Nice.
So I don't know if we made it to the forestry department, we made it to the land.
And now we are in the district commission division officer. Yes, waiting here. Thank you very much.
And then when you get there, we sat in that forestry office for
3 kilograms.
Met with a bunch of different people. They just like, there's a lot of bureaucracy in these countries. Everyone wants to feel important, right?
so
Like,
it's papers, sign this, sign that.
get this stamp, get that stamp.
So then this is us getting food at the local market because we're about to go up on a journey to a remote area.
Has been granted.
We can bring our own stuff.
See this paper? You know how long it took to get this paper? We had to talk to 8 different people to finally get permission to go to the forest. I'm not going to go through the whole conversation, but to start things off, the first guy, the first thing he asked us was, well, how do I know you're a tourist? You could just show up and say you're a tourist. Do you have a piece of paper from the tourism ministry saying you're a tourist? I just looked at him.
Want to prove that we were a tourist.
What else could I be?
You want to know how it's official? You see that stamp?
Actually,
Yeah, African
tourists
flag
went to the
stamps.
forest. That's
Yeah.
So now we're trying to get to Lafusi.
Go this
The
way.
final village we needed to get to. This is a river here. You can see it. I think I do a video, yeah. So then we are like, I think it's deep, not deep, too deep. We'll just drive
Be a
across
problem if it rains.
it.
Yeah.
So again, we're just kind of making it up, trying to get to Lafusi. That's where we knew we needed to access the forest from. But yeah, so just driving.
Surprise! So this road didn't exist on any maps, but it's definitely going to take us to where we need to go. Or at least partway there.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Bird Quest and Rock Jumper and whatever other tour company. We got you. We'll do all the legwork and you can just start.
Since
Thank you
then,
later.
it's now Bird
Yeah, a lot of tour companies are.
Quest has been
Village hopping for the last 2 hours, going from village to village. And hopefully we make it to our destination here pretty soon.
Deep section of the road.
I really just see how steep it is. Just know we're going up.
See.
Beautiful sun down here, but look at the mountains. That's where we're headed. Up into these clouds. I can't wait. We've accumulated a small audience, but that's standard. Everybody's really nice.
We've made it to the village of Lafusi, and we are now waiting on our local contact,
Happens to
Mokulia,
be one man.
who's supposed to speak English.
Kind of speaks English.
The
Yeah.
night before, we need to do a little bit of prep, packing all the gear, and getting ready to head up the mountain tomorrow.
We always had a, a little entourage. People just like, what are you doing? So watching, always watching.
Always.
I felt like I was a celebrity, and I kind of understand how Taylor Swift might feel. Like, I mean,
We're
you
gonna take
didn't
this
have any
down
privacy, and everyone was
all the way
all.
down through here. Eventually, we're going to enter the forest down here. And then we're going to cut across and camp somewhere up in here.
So the porters we're paying to carry our bags have outsourced it to another local villager along the way. Genius, right?
We were hiking about 8 miles to get up to our destination. You couldn't really tell from that video, but the forest is very small. Again, it's the only
Don't get me wrong. The trail's
Only about 13
long
kilometers.
and steep and climbing over 1,000 meters in elevation. But look how wide it is. It's It's like a great trail for walking.
It's steep, but I mean, at this point, we are in such good hiking shape, whatever. We walked everywhere in Africa, especially Tanzania. We started somewhere down there. That's just the view.
Still hiking. Trail's kind of gone though.
Runs to grass, and then you're just like, okay.
Here's the forest. We finally made it. You can just see where it's been cleared and where it starts. So we've officially made it into the forest. It's looking good. We'll see how this goes. But the hike up to get here was steep, but it wasn't bad because it was pretty open. So even the trail in the forest, which I'm surprised. I mean, look at this. It's an actual trail. I mean, can't complain about that.
Got quite many.
I'll do a better demonstration than this, but it turned.
Trail kind of went away. Now it's a lot of this mud.
You just step in, your foot gets stuck. Like, I don't know if you can tell. I do. Like, you're just trying to.
Maybe you didn't drop your phone.
This is our trail.
You can just see how it cuts it in.
Well, we've made it.
We got to the campsite.
Now we're clearing out the campsite.
Essentially, there was one little campsite in the woods that the researchers had used that they wanted.
We're clearing out the campsite, but there's only one campsite in the entire forest. It's been about 3 years since anyone's been here.
Yeah.
But they designated to only have one spot so that they're not cutting down anymore.
Overgrown, the researchers have them.
Here's our tent where we're gonna sleep tonight. We are still working on. I have no input for this, but this is what they want to do. So
we decided to leave. We're like, okay, we made it. We have minimal amount of time. Let's go birding. Even though we're tired, we're hungry.
with our porters today, we went back to camp for lunch. Turns out they cooked lunch, ate it all, didn't save any.
So we were hungry, but their lunch was already eaten at that point. So we just went back out birding.
Guess we're not eating. It is pouring down rain. And I'm soaked. And that's all I have to say about how today is going.
Up there, then it's raining.
I love ants. So
Yeah, that is a whole thing of just ants. I could do a presentation on ants, actually. I mean, they were things. I love ants. I think I just would video them all the time. If you look closely, it's just all ants.
And guardians on the sides, like protecting these.
Okay, so for the last
I'm whispering.
3 days, I guess this is day 3, but we've been getting up pretty much at dawn to go see if we can find birds. So last night we were out like way after dark, out after dark and up before light. That's standard.
But we did it,
This is finding the partridge.
which was the main target. We found it. Despite the rain, we had a small gap in the rain. And then technically the researchers had photos of this species. However, no one had seen them
those
before.
partridges. I mean, like, didn't hear a peep. I don't know if it was from the rain. We had kind of like not so great weather. But today, this morning, we sat down and voila, they came right in.
Yeah, we looked in that spot yesterday. But yeah, so then that photo that Ross took was the first publicly available species photo of that.
So after we had that partridge, we were looking for a species of sunbird that was a subspecies that had recently been described as probably a split. But the weather got extremely bad again. It was just super rainy. Melissa got bored because it was pouring down rain, so she went back and was sitting in the tent, and I was just slogging around on the trails. Camera gear put away and everything, pretty much just walking around. I don't like sitting still. I'm sitting in the tent, I'm gonna be out miserable.
It was pouring down rain. Like I sat in the tent.
Yeah, yeah, I know, it was very smart.
It was a normal person decision to make. Like,
But
You would do the same.
I was walking,
Not him.
was walking along, and rain kind of started to stop, and I had a bird called Chapman's Applevis, which is a little, the other one in the movie Applevis, right, that we had showed. It was a different species, but they're usually up in the canopy, and one came down kind of right in front of me, and I was fishing a little bit, and a third one popped down there right in front of me, and I'm like, all right, I'll get the camera out. This is a nice photo. I get the camera out, and they bug off, but then I saw a sunbird fly across my head, and I've been looking for a different species of sunbird, and I was pretty well tuned into the birds there after being there for like a day and a half. And I noticed it didn't have the yellow on the flanks that one of the forest species there typically has. I'm like, oh, what was that? And I go to raise my binoculars, and my binoculars were like completely fogged and trashed because it had been pouring down rain. So I just grabbed the camera and take a picture, and I zoom in on the picture for a second, and I go, huh. So the thing that stuck out to me is it's a short-billed species of sunbird, right? So there's only like 2 or 3 short-billed species of sunbird, and there's definitely not one that has a demarcated like yellow belly, gray breast,
Red, blue.
red and blue, and like right away I was like, this is something.
Something else.
So I pitched a little bit, and luckily it flew in above me, and that's when I got this photo. The other photo wasn't so great. And there happened to be a female too, and had 5-6 minutes just right around me getting a bunch of pictures. They were calling. I was able to make a few sound recordings of them. And then they kind of disappeared. Now I gotta go get Melissa. So I started walking back to find her. She was coming up the trail actually, because after
Because it had stopped raining, I was like, I better find him.
so we came out and looked, we didn't find it again that evening. The next morning on the walk out, we did have it again briefly. She got to see it briefly overhead. But yeah, I mean, we were pretty certain it was going to be a new species. I was racking my brain about what else could it be, like a potential hybrid or, subspecies, but we went down and, talked with some individuals, pretty much all the leading ornithologists in Africa. Everyone pretty much is in agreement that it's a new species. Since then, a couple groups have gone up and were able to find them.
This is a different
This is
birders.
one of my friend's photos. Was able to get up and see the sunbird. So it's there, it's exciting. The only issue is it's Tanzania. So the worst country to get permits in for research and collection and everything is Tanzania. It's just a horrendous country to work in that regards. The one birder there, Noel Baker, an expat from the UK, has lived there for like 30, 40 years, does research. Even he can't get banding or collection permits right now. I mean, he lives in the country. There's another guy, actually from Pennsylvania, David Moyer, who's living there now as well. He's been trying to get collection permits. So it's kind of just in that lovely in-between state that often happens with undescribed species of
It's
birds.
now in eBird. They
It's
put
there. It is in eBird with the last taxonomic update. So it's Mapamero sunbird, which is the forest patch, which is the Mapamero forest patch, which we were at.
Like we mentioned, that forest patch is 1.5 kilometers wide. What is that in miles? Like
A mile.
1 mile wide.
6-7 miles long. So the
That's
bird is
it.
almost definitely critically endangered. Whether it will ever be formally described or when that will happen, I'm not sure. Maybe at some point I'll get over there and get some permits. I don't actually collect them, but at least capture them and take blood samples.
It's like a bird that's critically endangered. You could collect 5 of them. That could be half the
So,
population, you don't know.
But
You wanna get DNA.
Yeah,
you wanna
exactly.
get-
So
yeah, I mean, most birds aren't described nowadays if you don't collect them, but or all of them, but that's kind of changing. I think we would be able to sit this one through if we were at least able to capture it and take measurements.
at least get some blood sample,
Blood
like, and
type
let it go.
samples, but to be determined, maybe someday, but it is there. People are seeing it, which is cool. Just
Sometimes it's referred to as Gallardy's sunbird. There's a local guide who leads tours, and he'll call it Gallardy's sunbird when he takes
Yeah,
his
well,
clients.
it was a fun experience that we definitely never thought we would.
Yeah, so I had mentioned all that, like, oh, find a new species. He's like, no one find. This was actually the first new species of bird
In Africa,
discovered
30
in Africa
years.
in over 30 years.
with the last one being that partridge,
partridge.
like the other, the
So-
Uzongwa version of that. Which
We were going into these areas that were so remote. Nobody goes to these places. I mean, the researchers, and then what, 2 decades go by and then we go. That, it's like nobody would go there. Now they're starting to, because there's 2 birds to see. There's this one and then the partridge. So there's tours now, like,
But there's definitely more surprises in Tanzania. There'll be some other fun discoveries out there. Just see what happens. So we've been talking about birds. We'll talk a little bit about mammals because you can't go to Africa and only look at birds, right?
It's Africa.
It's
And there's
Africa,
stuff like
so-
these are wild dogs. Look at those ears, like Mickey Mouse ears.
So these are, yeah, so we had been to a number of parks. So unfortunately, I mean, even though it's Africa, a lot of the, charismatic megafauna is only found in parks, right? They're extirpated. Like you go to South Africa, you're not driving around and seeing elephants and lions. And stuff.
Oh, only gonna see them
Leopards
if you
maybe.
go into the park.
But mostly you're only seeing these animals inside of parks. Most other countries are that way as well. Some are a little bit more wild, like Botswana and Zambia can be slightly more wild. Giraffes and elephants out in other places. But we've been to a number of parks and never seen wild dogs, and we were driving through Zambia towards the latter half of our trip, and it was like right after dawn, and I noticed up on the road, like, these aren't wild dogs. She was like half sleeping, and like waking her up. But we followed this pack of wild dogs, which wild dogs are the most effective hunter in Africa. They have like a kill rate of like 80%. I think lions are typically like 30%.
20 to 30%. That's the kill rate of a lion.
So we were
Right.
following them along the road, and all of a sudden they kicked up a bush buck, and it was just like game on. We saw them chasing this bush back, and they disappeared into the woods, and I quickly did a U-turn and went back the other way. And they actually brought the bush buck like right out on the road, like obviously bring it down and everything.
I don't know
but
if
it
we
was-
have, do we have warning? No,
Yeah.
sorry, warning.
Nature.
It's,
But
this is
yeah, but then we got to watch the entire pack just devour this entire bush buck. I mean, in like half
they're
hour.
very efficient.
The entire,
hunters.
because they eat so quick because they're small, right? If a hyena shows up, if lions show up, they're gonna just
Often their meal
get
gets
pushed
taken
off.
from
So they devour this entire deer, like right before our eyes. which was
And it
just
was right on the side road. We're by ourselves, just so we parked the car. I mean, we weren't even in a national park at this point. We were
No,
in Zambia. Well, I guess we were. We're driving through it. We didn't.
But it wasn't like an official map, like we hadn't paid an entrance fee or anything. We were just driving.
So like it was a true through road. Like there's trucks going.
But it's funny, as we're like seeing this, a couple Africans drive by and like, a couple of them just drive straight by. One or
they
two
just
get
drive
out and
off.
take like one photo and
And
keep
leave,
going.
yeah.
It's just like, whether I guess they've seen it more,
I mean, this was hands down one of the coolest things we got to witness.
Yeah,
We
it is.
see them, we find them first thing in the morning. We literally got to watch the entire thing. I mean, I think you could go back to Africa for, 30 years and not see that again. It's just like perfect timing, perfect on the side of the road. It's not like they chased the bush buck way in and lost it after that, but it was just like right there. The whole thing.
But then, of course, we saw a lot of other cool things, right? These are some lions from Natasha. One of the coolest experiences with a lion
Oh, yeah.
was when we were in the Masai Mara in Kenya. We came across the male lion who had just taken down a water buffalo. And he was like exhausted. You could see him panting and everything, taking that down by himself. And we were just sitting there. And all of a sudden, he walks up, comes up to the back of our truck, like just goes up along the
if you
side
have a
like a cat at your house, right on
Yeah.
your leg. Just
He
right
just
along the
rubbed
side of our
himself
truck.
all along the truck.
Came right outside my window and just laid down in the shade. So,
And so this is Ross's driver's side here and the lion is here. I mean, Ross
I
is
mean, I
like,
could just reach my hand out.
if his back come
Uh-oh.
to the head, like where the window would be. 'Cause
But
he's
yeah,
so
so we
tall,
just-
big.
And we were the only ones around, not a single other vehicle. Just
And this is in a national park. Normally it would be just like a swarm. of
Yeah, and it's
vehicles
the
around.
Masai Mara, it's one of the most visited areas. So that was really neat. Saw a bunch of other cool mammals like servals, leopards, of course, cheetahs. This was kind of fun. We were in Serengeti and we hadn't found any cheetahs. We had driven back to one of the main areas. And there's a lot of local guides and stuff around. We don't have much business right now, right? So
Because it's COVID and no one's around.
they're like, hey, do you want to go out? I'm like, not really, we're doing our own thing. And
We're looking
like,
for
looking for birds and everything. And two of the guys were like, well, we want to learn about birds. And I'm like, all right. I'm like, well, you know where there's any cheetahs? They're like, yeah. I'm like, well, how about we go look for the cheetahs and on the way, we'll teach you about birds. So they jumped in our truck and we went driving out and, we're pointing out all the different, bird species, common bird species, and teaching them about them so that they could, take their tours and teach them about the birds. And drove out to an area where there was supposed to be cheetahs and there weren't. We never saw the cheetahs. We went back, and then the next morning we went out by ourselves. Got to see a couple of cheetahs. Hyenas. Hyenas are one of the animals that are everywhere. So even outside of national parks, a lot of times we would be birding. And I'd be out at night or something and you just like look at the thermal and you'd be this one down in the lower right-hand corner. I was walking through an area to flush a little rail type and kicked out a hyena instead. But they're scary animals, you know, in packs, but when there's one or two, they're more scary.
They're a scavenger most of all, so.
Big deal. And then in Gabon, we happened across a pangolin, which was really cool. So that was very, very neat to be
They're
able
the most trafficked
See.
animal in the world. Their scales are
to use by the Chinese for
supposed to cure something or other, who knows? They kill them en masse. And they're like, they are the most trafficked animal in the world. So, because they're defenseless. It's just a little plant-eating animal that,
well, they eat ants.
well, they dance, but yeah, I guess you're right.
But yeah, it was really cool to see.
So super rare these are because they're so sought after because there's a value, I guess, outside of them.
And nocturnal.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
nocturnal,
exactly.
yeah.
And of course,
That's
the
important.
giraffes, zebras, dik-diks, warthogs, all kinds of. There's always something cool to see when birds walk. Canucks,
On the left. And,
Kenya, horses from Namibia. And then, of course, there's gorillas. So this is our last video. I know we're probably about
it's 8:45. How much longer we got?
As
15
long as
minutes?
you want.
Okay.
We don't close.
Okay.
Looking in Gorillas National Park. I'll let you guess what we're searching for. Hello.
Yeah, we went to look for gorillas. We did this
Wow.
in 2021.
Don't run. Don't run.
Watch this video first. See that? I don't know if you caught it. I think I show it again. So one just flings a vine, the other one he But so this group had 3 silverback males living together. Typically, there's one dominant male and then multiple females, but these ones all got along well enough. They could be together. So mature adults grow these silver hairs on their back. Gigantic. They, look at that, 594 pounds. An adult male can
And
weigh.
when you go on these treks, you have like 1 hour. So
So they're
pretty
huge,
cool.
but they are plant eaters. They're not. And technically, prior to even COVID, you're supposed to wear
So
masks.
this is a dominant
DNA
male in the group.
Yeah, sickness is
He's in charge.
This is the one that was in charge. And we were lucky in that we didn't have to hike far to get to these ones, but there they are, just, foraging, eating leaves, whatever they do. So even though they're habituated humans, it's like kind of still nerve wracking. I'm taking this video, okay? I am right there with my phone. This is just a phone. And he's coming at me, but you're supposed to do not move.
This is just not.
I mean, there's no zoom on. That's like, I could have reached down, touched him. He walked right by my knee, but it's like, you're supposed to stay so still. Don't move, don't frighten him. And
Don't
it's
make eye
taking,
contact.
don't make eye contact, and then you're good to go. And they're used to humans, so it's like not a big deal, but I mean, it was just so neat to see those things up close and, be able to spend some time with them. They were one of the cooler, I mean, it's expensive, but we're like, if we have to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the price is up to like $800 per person.
Per person for 1 hour with gorillas.
Luckily, we were actually because it's-
1,500?
1,500 in Rwanda.
yeah, 15. Yeah, Rwanda's even worse.
Yeah, this we did in.
And luckily, we were actually there during they had a COVID discount, so it was 50% off. So we got lucky because the first time we actually made up our mind we weren't going to do this.
So like, it's just so much money.
Well,
We're budget travelers. We can't.
But then when we went back and because it was 50%, we were like, all right.
We gotta do it.
We gotta do it. So we did. But then we saw chimps as well a couple times, which was neat. And we actually about the gorillas. So it was really cool seeing the gorillas in Uganda, getting up close with them. But they are habituated, So it's cool, but it's also like you're almost in the zoo. When we were in Gabon, going out, so Gabon is like a
Wild.
fantastic country.
Gabon is wild.
It's like 80. It's still like it's a polar opposite of a lot of Africa. It's about 80% still forest. Where most countries in Africa are 80% or more defrost. The only problem with Gabon is getting into Gabon is, I mean, it's worse than Tanzania. It's just a disaster. They much hate tourists. They make it extremely difficult to get into the country, get visas, get in there. We had a lot of trouble getting into the country. But once you get there and you get out into it, it's just fantastic. You barely even see people where everywhere else in Africa, all these people. In Gabon, we camped for a week in just a random side of the forest somewhere, and we saw like one person all week. And it was just amazing. But while we were there, we visited the national park, went out with a guy. It was where we had that pangolin. And what he typically does is he works with the gorillas, like a professional gorilla tracker. So we were there for the birds, but we heard a gorilla drumming.
And he's like, you wanna see a gorilla? And
We
we're
just
like,
go
okay.
off through the woods, and out of nowhere, he pops us out in front of this
Wild
silverback,
gorilla.
completely wild silverback. But we only saw briefly moving through. It was just a totally different experience, because it's you were a lot more nervous, right? That gorilla was he could turn and just
Charge
come at you
running.
out of nowhere. He was a completely wild animal, and that was just really neat to experience.
Most people don't get a wild gorilla.
Yeah, so those were the lowlands. So this was the in Uganda you get the mountain gorillas, and then down there is the lowlands. So we also got to see chimps a few places, including Gabon, Uganda, and Tanzania. Some of the other monkeys and chameleons, reptiles that we would see. And then, of course, cool birds. So I'll just run through some. This is a great throated rail, one of the rarest birds we saw on the trip.
I didn't see that one, missed it.
Rub it
It's
in.
pouring down rain again, okay, and I decided to stay back.
But yeah, so that was a really good bird to see. Ringneck francolin, which we found in Tanzania, was the first record for Tanzania in 30 years. And is the best photo.
And to put this into perspective, there are two local bird photographers putting together an entire photographic guide to the birds of East Africa. They have every bird of the photos of East Africa.
Except for 2 or 3 species, and this was one of the
Yes,
ones.
they had all their photos except 2 or 3 species. So then we get this photo, which is going into the book now, of course. A number of the photos he took are going to go into that book, but that is one of them.
And then some other rare ones. So we hiked up a mountain. This is the one she talked about. We picked up another remote range in Tanzania, and saw a couple subspecies that will surely be split someday. That's the Kungwe Wadawai on the left, and then Fox's Weaver on the right, which is the only endemic in Uganda, which is cool to see. We went out a lot at night, seeing a bunch of nightjar species, like small nightjar. The heaviest flying bird in the world, Kori bustard, which stands, I think, about this tall. They're found in kind of the Serengeti areas, Kenya and Tanzania, South Africa. Shoebill, of course, which is one of the charismatic species of
Look
Uganda.
at that thing.
They go out and they feed on the lungfish, higher swamps. And then some other fun ones from
Lark.
Namibia. There's a bunch of different larks everywhere. So we were always going around finding different species of larks. Baru's eagle, owls, barn owl, and whiteface, scops owl with his little
Snack. I
snack.
think that's a kidney hanging out, maybe, I don't know.
We visited northern Kenya, where the lava fields had just recently gotten a lot of rain, so on the left it was usually it's just barren black, but there was all this vegetation coming up, and some rare species like Aflark and star-spotted nightjars were present there. The ground hornbills, really neat to see. Turkey-sized hornbills that roam the Serengeti. Secretary bird, which is in its own family. They hunt snakes. So they go through the vegetation and just kind of hit with their feet until they find snakes. Kill and eat snakes. Another busted species. This is collared lark, so this is another one we could have done an entire story on. This bird is rarely seen because it's mostly found in Somalia. And there's a little part of eastern Kenya where you can see it that's very iffy to go to.
Maybe safe? Maybe.
Not really safe.
Yeah, we went anyway, but.
But we went with a guy named Chege, this local Kenyan, for Global Big Day in May of the month.
Him and his friends were going, they were like, you wanna join us for our big
He
day?
pretty
So
much
we did.
described it as we were playing a game of hide and seek with the local population.
Like,
because
just
there's
don't be seen,
a lot of
okay?
Somalis that come in and nap and stuff. But we went in, we saw this bird, which was really cool. That's a collared lark and vulture and guinea fowl at the time, which was my 7,000th bird. But yeah, so these are some of the people, right? So that's what Chege mentioning in the bottom right hand corner. That's the guy we did the color mark with. In the upper left hand corner is our friend Julian, who joined us for Uganda.
From Switzerland.
In the upper right hand corner is Mopilio and Amos, who joined us for the Rubeho Mountains. They were our two guides where we found new species. And the bottom left is our friend Rich and Kim, who are South African. Rich is the guy who drove up to Malawi. They were awesome. Beginning of our trip, we stayed at their place to help get everything ready. We came back from COVID, we stayed at their place to get everything ready.
He helped sell our truck.
Yeah, he ended up, so we just left our truck with him and he sold it for us.
It's a good friend.
Yeah, so that, yeah, so it's, it was an enjoyable trip. That's kind of our presentation. I don't know if there's any other questions.
Now we're like,
Don't worry.
okay.